are the only folks keeping the barbarians from the gate.
I got into the labor movement not because I wanted to negotiate wages. I got into the labor movement because I saw it as a vehicle to do massive social change to improve the lots of people.
Let's take these son of a out and give America back to America where we belong. Thank you very much. Thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, the Tea Party can go straight to hell. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American. Fight for what's right. Fight for your life.
And welcome back in on a Wednesday morning. Starting hour number 3, I am Brian Summerfield. He is Trucker Randy, and we are your defending fathers.
Hey, good morning, Jack Hoogendyk. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Randy. Great to be with you.
Yeah, Brian and I wanted to have you on this hour because we saw that article in Red State about Fred Upton defeating Fred Upton and his miraculous change here in the last couple of months toward being a conservative all of a sudden, and the only reason he's doing it is because of Jack Hoogendyk. One of the questions we had is, did you see that article, and did you agree with it? Jack, are you there?
Hey, yeah, here I am.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, we set up that Red State article where Fred Upton defeated Fred Upton because of you. And I wondered if you had seen that yet.
I have, and I appreciate what Eric Erickson has said. Actually, I think it was a cross-post that came from Drew Ryan and Daniel Horowitz over at the Madison Project, one of the strongest defenders of individual liberty and constitutional principles out there. And, yeah, we haven't defeated Fred Upton, the candidate, yet, but we have certainly defeated much of Fred Upton's philosophy and ideals, and he's voting quite a bit differently. He's still got a long way to go, but we've certainly gotten his attention.
Yep, I just heard a door shut in the background there. I know you're out walking your district and passing out literature, so appreciate you calling in and multitasking with us.
Oh, no problem. I think we can handle it.
Well, here's the thing. Brian had brought up a very good point in that article, is that, he voted against the amendment just a couple of months ago that would have completely defunded the Department of Energy's funding, loan guarantees of these green energy initiatives, and now is going to introduce a bill. What was the name of the title of that bill again, Brian, if you got it right there?
Yeah, it's the No More Cylinders Act.
Right. No more cylinders. That's it.
Give me a break, Jack. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really pretty hypocritical, and here's why I say that. What was the issue with Solyndra? Was it the fact that Solyndra went bankrupt, or was it the fact that Solyndra received a subsidy, a handout, from the Department of Energy that was made up of taxpayer funds? It was $500 million out of the Treasury. It was taxpayers' money, your money and my money. And so the question is, what was the real issue here? Was it the fact that they ended up going broke, or that we were giving away money? Well, I think it's the latter, that we're giving away this taxpayer money. Now, that money came to Solyndra through the Department of Energy, Chairman Chow. And what a lot of people don't know is that a couple of years ago, Fred Upton co-signed a letter to the Chairman of Energy asking for those same kind of handouts, those same kinds of subsidies, loan guarantees, taxpayer funding for 3 solar and wind and, alternative energy companies right here in Michigan. And one of them is called United Solar, Solar Ovionics. And guess what? They went bankrupt. Well, The only difference is that they didn't get the money. Fred asked for the money, but the secretary, for whatever reason, decided not to give them the money. And he's been asked about that one time on a panel discussion that was on C-SPAN, and not a lot of people saw it. But the question was asked, well, Mr. Upton, you're going after Solyndra here because they went broke and they got all this money from the federal treasury, but didn't you do the same thing when you asked for, these loan guarantees for United Solar? And his answer was, well, yeah, but they didn't get the money, so the case is closed.
No, sir. The case is not closed. That is the weakest explanation, Jack, I've ever heard. You can't claim victory that you're a conservative because they didn't get the money on something that you asked for.
Exactly. If they had gotten the money and then ended up going bankrupt as they did, Fred Upton would be just as guilty as any of Barack Obama and his buddies for what happened with Libra.
Right.
Now, of course, Mr. Upton is doing what he believes he needs to do to sound real conservative and say, well, we just can't have these kinds of subsidies coming from the federal treasury to companies like this, these alternative energy companies. And well, he's right, but he's kind of late to the party.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to ask your opinion on is, as we all know, he and others voted to raise our debt ceiling. The last time it was done, there was a negotiations at the last minute, 11th hour, guns to their head. They had to do something. They came up with a conditional increase that was conditional upon $1 trillion worth of cuts that the super committee had to come up with. And if they weren't able to secure these cuts, that would automatically trigger $500 billion being cut out of defense and $500 being cut out of Medicare for our seniors.
Right.
And Fred Upton was a member of that super committee.
Right.
And my question to you is, was that a predetermined selection process that put him and David Camp and a few other Republicans, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats? Do you believe they specifically targeted Fred Upton to be on that super committee, which ultimately failed and triggered all these cuts? Do you think that was an actual strategized decision to put Fred Upton on that super committee?
I'm not sure that I can answer that question. It's really a matter of speculation, but I will say this. It's my belief that, first of all, that super committee was destined to failure from the moment it was thought of. And secondly, and this is important, it was an unconstitutional act. There's no way that you can hold the legislature to the decision of 12 members of that legislative body. That you can't do that. But I think that was something nobody wanted to be a part of because they all knew that there was no way any agreement was going to be found between Democrats and Republicans. But in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, Randy, I think that Mr. Upton was beholden to the Speaker, and the Speaker was trying to find somebody to serve on that super committee, and Fred Upton was somebody that he believed he could tap on the shoulder and say, hey, Fred, we got you that chairmanship you wanted, but now we need some help from you. Because he was vying for the chairmanship of the Energy Committee before the last election, and in fact he beat out Joe Barton, who many would say should have been the chairman of Energy, but Fred got the job. He did whatever it was he needed to do to get that appointment. And so then one must ask the question, one favor deserves another, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And I guess the question is, did in fact Mr. Upton have an obligation to the Speaker to do as he asked when he said, we need you on this super committee? But yeah, it was destined to failure, and it was a bad idea.
Unconstitutional. There's no way 435 members of Congress are duly elected across this country for them to try to select 12 to represent all the decision-making process of what the entire Congress should have had input on.
Well, exactly. You cannot do that. That's not allowed under the Constitution.
Well, do you feel that the campaign, you ran against him, I believe, there in 2010 with limited funds. You got. Why don't you just tell the audience the numbers from 2010?
Well, sure. We got in late. We announced in April for an August primary. We raised less than $65,000. We probably only contacted half of the people who voted, and yet we did get 43% of the vote, and it was a big surprise to Mr. Upton that we did that well. He never mentioned my name because he didn't think he needed to. This time, we got in earlier, we've raised twice as much money, and he's talking about me all the time. He spent over $1 million just in the last 3 months, literally ripping me to shreds on any number of things that are not the things that voters care about, but rather it's almost could be described as a character assassination. You know, to suggest that I am a friend of sex offenders, that I defend super drunk drivers, that I went through a revolving door to become a lobbyist, all these kind of things. These are the things that people don't care about as much as where he stands on the size of government.
Well, one of the attacks that are in this Red State article that I'd like you to respond to is he has put out a lot of mailings directly into the 6th District where you guys are representing, and he is attacking you that when you were a 3-term state legislator, I know for a fact your record is that you never voted to raise taxes.
Right.
And one of the things that he alleges in this mailings is that you were a tax increaser and a very liberal state representative.
Right.
How do you respond to these attacks?
Well, I guess first of all, rather than try to defend myself, I will let 2 independent news agencies, MERS, the Michigan Information and Resource Service, and Inside Michigan Politics, Bill Ballinger, I'll let them come to my defense because those are 2 independent news agencies, both of whom rated me as the most conservative lawmaker in Michigan. And over a 6-year period, if you add up all the scores, I was about a 93% conservative rating. And no, I did not raise any taxes in the 6 years I was in the legislature. There were a couple of, out of the 6,000 plus votes that I took, there were a couple of times I voted for something that I later had an opportunity to vote against. But there's a couple things he characterizes as tax increases that weren't tax increases. I mean, they play the game that way. But the bottom line is there is not a single tax increase that the governor signed during the 6 years I was in the legislature that I voted for. Not one. And he can play the numbers games and look at votes all he wants. But the bottom line is I have a rock-solid record as a state legislator not voting to increase anybody's taxes. And, he can accept that or not, but that's a fact.
Now, one of the other issues I'd like to talk to you about is you and I are both involved, and you actually are a founding member of Michigan Freedom to Work, having Michigan become a right-to-work state. You've been supportive of it ever since you were a state legislator. You introduced it, I believe, back in, was it 2007?
Yep, 2007 is correct.
And you're part of our effort that we're working on to have this issue brought up later this year after we defeat the Union Boss Ballot Initiative, is what I call it. Bottom line is this, Jack. Where are you now that you're running for U.S. Congress? There's arguments that other politicians have pointed to that when they're running for state office, they think it should be a federal law. It should be done in Washington. And now that you're running for Washington, you're saying that maybe it should be a state law, a 10th Amendment issue. Where exactly do you stand on right to work, and how do you differ than Fred Upton on this issue?
Well, I'm kind of a belt and suspenders kind of guy. I think right to work is so important that I think we need to work on it at the federal as well as at the state level. And there's no question as to my commitment to passing right to work in Michigan at the state level. And I think that's the most important thing. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that we can do at the federal level. You know, Rand Paul has a bill that he's introduced in the Senate that I would happily sign on to and wholeheartedly support in the House that would free up and allow for the states to become right to work states. And a federal law I don't necessarily have a problem with. I do still want to protect the rights of the states, but what we need to do is, for instance, get rid of the National Labor Relations Board, because the National Labor Relations Board has stymied, the free enterprise we need, and the freedom of employers to decide, where they want to locate their businesses, and the freedom of employees to decide whether or not they want to be a member. I mean, of course, Boeing is the example we look to. And the big difference is that Fred Upton has continued to vote to defend big labor. He just voted for the transportation bill, which has huge favors to big labor and the union bosses, and prevailing wages. He continues to support and defend that kind of things that make a huge separation between me and Fred Upton, because it's not just the fact that I support right to work. I don't know that he's ever said that he does. He's never come out and done that. But there's any number of other votes that you can look at that I've taken that support labor freedom, whereas there's a number of votes that he's taken at the federal level that support continued restrictions on labor freedom and favors to the big union bosses.
So that's clear. That's very clear. And I think the listeners to this interview should understand how important labor freedom is to Michigan's economy and bringing jobs back, where your district is, how many miles to the Indiana border there in the southwest corner of the state?
Well, it starts at the state line and it runs north about 80 miles.
Yep.
So we are a district that's a neighboring district to Indiana, and it's a huge issue, especially in the counties of Berrien, Cass, and St. Joseph. Those three counties border Indiana, and you can talk to people down there, and they'll tell you how many people live in Michigan and work in Indiana, because that's where the jobs are.
And it's amazing that much manufacturing and industrial base is leaving those areas, because, like you say, all they have to do is relocate their plants 30, 40, 50 miles away from they're currently located in Michigan, and being a right-to-work state with less taxes, less regulations, and right on the 80-90 corridor for shipping.
Right.
For truck drivers. So that's amazing. One other thing I want to ask you about real quick here. Sure. I know you're out working hard in the campaign. Taxation. One of the biggest things that needs to be done, in my opinion, is we need to replace the IRS tax code. And I think it should just be thrown in the garbage, all 70,000 pages of it. We should repeal the 16th Amendment. We should shut the IRS down. We should replace it with the fair tax. Where do you stand on H.R. 25, and where does Fred Upton stand on this?
Well, first of all, I was a co-sponsor of the fair tax in the Michigan House of Representatives, and I am a strong supporter of fair tax at the national level. And in fact, as you know, when the fair tax was introduced for this legislative session by a congressman down in Georgia, remind me of his name.
Rob Woodall.
Rob Woodall. We were there, standing behind him and smiling when he introduced his H.R. 25 and as a sponsor, and we were there supporting him, saying this is something that needs to be done at the federal level. And the momentum grows every time it comes back around. There's more sponsors, and I look forward to joining with a number of colleagues down there in Washington to sponsor that bill in 2013.
And Fred Upton, what's his position?
I don't know that he's ever answered a question on it, but he certainly has nothing to indicate support. I mean, I don't believe he's ever co-sponsored. I don't think he's ever co-sponsored the bill. And so I guess I'd have to say that you're not going to see it happen under his watch.
Jack Hoogendyk is with us. He is running in the primary in the 6th Congressional District. Jack, I'm going to plug your website real quick, www.jackformichigan.com. And one of the things that I thought was a great ploy that you had done, we talked about it on the air about a month ago, is when you discounted your contribution rates. You could have a 20% discount on contributions. You could donate $100, and it would only cost you $80 with the 20% discount. And right on down the road. I don't know if you came up with that or Steve Mobley came up with it, but I thought it was a great campaign.
Well, I don't remember, and we just like to build a little excitement. Obviously, if you make an $80 contribution, you couldn't get credit for $100, and it's not tax deductible anyway. But and we've got something going right now. My birthday is next week, Tuesday, and I'm going to be 57, and we've got a money bomb. We're trying to raise $10,000, and we've already raised over $7,000 towards that $10,000 goal. And people can click on the website and make an online contribution. And I also want to ask real quick if people want to help our campaign anywhere in America. We have a nationwide calling program that we've set up where you can log on, get a list of names, numbers, and a script, and you can make phone calls free of charge right from the comfort of your own, kitchen table. And we'd love to have people do that. All they need to do is contact, and the best thing is just Jack Hoogendyk at gmail.com. Just my name, Jack Hoogendyk at gmail.com. And we will get you linked up with our Crackerjack tech guy, and you'll be making calls. And we're calling the voters. All they need to know is who we are, and the voters who matter they'll come out and we'll win this race.
Now that is specific, Jack. Those lists of people that we could be calling. Right. They can actually call these voters, and these are people specifically that would probably be voting in the Republican primary on August 7th?
That's correct. We're only calling the people who we know have the greatest likelihood of voting Republican and are voting in the primary, and they tend to be conservative, right-thinking people. And they're looking for a change. And once they know that an option is out there, we'll win it hand over fist. So.
Well, last thing is this money bomb and the things that you're doing with you raising this money. If people could go and just give, 10, 20, 30, $50, whatever they can give, what exactly do you plan to use this money for in the last 2 weeks of this primary?
Well, $50 buys a radio ad. $20 buys, 10 signs. I mean, we can get signs with wires for around $2 and, get the name out there. So we're using those funds for very specific purposes. That's communicating directly with the voters, the phone calls, the literature. We got people knocking on doors all over the district. And, we run a pretty Spartan campaign. The funds go directly to voter contact, whether it's via mail, literature, handouts, or on the radio. So people can rest assured that their money will be well spent.
Excellent. It's keeping up the true penny-pinching conservative that you are.
Oh, absolutely. I was quoted in the paper once saying, I'm cheap, and my wife is cheaper. And she's the one that does the books. So.
Well, Jack, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, especially a follow-up to that Red State article we had. I encourage you, go to jackformichigan.com. There are great endorsements on there. There are great quotes from guys like Dave Agema and Bill Sage and friends of our show that corroborate what we've been talking about on the air. And good luck coming up. 2 weeks left on the campaign trail.
Thanks very much, guys. Great to be with you.
Thank you again. I'm Brian Summerfield. He is Trucker Randy, and we are your defending fathers.
This is the Patriot Voice Radio Network.